It's hard to put into words, but I'll try. You know that feeling when everything in your life is in place? When you're with someone you trust, someone you've built a future with, and everything just feels right? We were together for 3 years. 3 years of laughter, shared moments, and what I thought was love. On the surface, everything seemed perfect. People around us even said we were the couple to admire. We shared so much, our dreams, our fears, and our love. At least, that's what I believed. But sometimes, reality has a way of knocking down your carefully built walls. And that's exactly what happened. I never imagined it would end this way. You always think, it could never happen to me. But when I caught him cheating, everything changed. All the trust, all the love, all the moments we'd shared, they became shattered pieces of a story I didn't even recognize anymore. This story isn't just about betrayal. It's about the raw, real emotions that come with having everything you thought you knew turned upside down. It's about how something that felt so secure, so certain, can suddenly feel so fragile. The hardest part isn't just the betrayal itself, but realizing that the love you thought was unshakable was nothing more than a facade. I had to face the fact that someone I trusted with my heart didn't feel the same way. And that's why it mattered so much to me. The pain of betrayal is unlike any other. It goes deep, cuts deep, and leaves you questioning everything about yourself. But more than that, it made me realize something that I needed to learn. That I had to pick up the pieces, no matter how broken I felt. It wasn't always like this, of course. There was a time when everything felt perfect. Those early days of our relationship are still so vivid in my mind, like snapshots in a photo album. We'd go on spontaneous dates, laughing over dinner, talking for hours about our hopes, our dreams. I remember the way he'd hold my hand, the little looks we exchanged that made me feel like we were the only two people in the world. I thought we were building something special, something that would last. We spent weekends exploring new places, making memories that seemed to fit so perfectly together. The future felt like an endless horizon. We talked about what we wanted to do in life, about the kind of family we'd want to build, the adventures we'd share. It felt like the beginning of something beautiful. Love was easy then, effortless even. But you know how life works, right? It's easy to get caught up in the good moments and forget that beneath the surface, things can start to shift without you even realizing. At first, the signs were so subtle I almost convinced myself they weren't there. Maybe it was something as small as him being a little more distracted, a little less present during our conversations, or how he'd suddenly have a last-minute meeting or some other excuse when I needed him the most. Have you ever had that gut feeling something wasn't right, but you couldn't quite put your finger on it? You know something's off, but you push it aside, thinking it's nothing, just a bad day or a phase that will pass. There were moments when I felt it, like a quiet voice at the back of my mind, whispering that something wasn't adding up. But I brushed it off. After all, why would I suspect anything? He was my partner, the person I trusted more than anyone else in the world. I didn't want to overthink things or read too much into small details. It's easy to ignore those quiet warnings, especially when everything else seems perfect. And so, life went on, and I told myself to focus on the love we shared, to keep believing in the dream we were building. But sometimes, things aren't as they seem, and that quiet voice of doubt, it was trying to tell me something I wasn't ready to hear. I'll never forget the moment I found out. It wasn't a dramatic scene, no confrontation, no immediate outburst. It started with something small, something I had no reason to be suspicious of at first. But as the days went by, it stuck in my mind. A fleeting moment that, at the time, seemed insignificant. It all started with his phone. I didn't normally check his messages. I trusted him. But on that particular day, he'd left his phone unattended on the kitchen counter. and it buzzed. A text. A name that I didn't recognize. It was just a glance. A quick moment of curiosity that I'll forever regret. Something about that name felt off, and a part of me wanted to dismiss it, but my instincts told me otherwise. So, against my better judgment, I picked up the phone. I didn't intend to invade his privacy, but I was driven by a feeling I couldn't ignore. When I opened the message, my heart dropped. It wasn't just any message. It was flirtatious, intimate, almost like a confession. There were emojis, ones I knew were reserved for people who shared something more than just friendship. It wasn't just one message either. There were several, sent over the course of days, maybe weeks. I froze. My hands went cold. My chest tightened. For a moment, everything went silent, like the world had stopped moving around me. I kept reading, despite the voice in my head telling me to stop. I kept hoping that maybe, just maybe, I had misunderstood, but deep down, I knew I hadn't. Every message confirmed my worst fear. He was talking to someone else, in a way that made it clear there was something more than just friendship. I put the phone down slowly, as if I was afraid it would burn me. The shock, the disbelief. It hit me like a wave, drowning everything else in its path. I could hardly think, hardly breathe. My mind was racing, trying to piece together what I had just seen, trying to make sense of the confusion that was suddenly consuming me. My hands shook as I tried to steady myself. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the phone across the room. But instead, I just stood there, paralyzed by the weight of the truth. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, staring into an abyss. I couldn't breathe. How could he do this to me? How could the person I loved, someone I trusted, betray me so completely? I couldn't wrap my mind around it. Every memory of us, every little moment I had cherished, now felt like a lie. How long had this been going on? How much had I missed? My body felt numb, but my mind was racing 1,000,000 miles per minute. My heart ached with a kind of pain I didn't know was possible, like it was breaking into 1,000 pieces, too fragile to ever be put back together. The anger came later, slowly at first, then all at once. But in that moment, I was just numb, stuck in a daze. I didn't know what to do, where to go, or how to feel. I wanted answers, but I was terrified of them. And for the first time in our entire relationship, I didn't recognize the person in the mirror. The days after I discovered, the truth felt like living in a storm. It was like my world had been turned upside down, and I was standing in the middle of it, unable to make sense of anything. The stability I had always known, the life I had built, was no longer there. It was like everything I had trusted, everything I had believed in, was now broken, scattered around me in pieces I couldn't even begin to pick up. I kept replaying that moment over and over in my mind. The moment I picked up his phone, the messages, the realization that everything I thought was real was just an illusion. It wasn't just about the cheating, though that was bad enough. It was about the betrayal, the lies, the secrets, the feeling that everything we had shared was a lie. I kept asking myself, how could I not have seen this? The shame, the embarrassment, the hurt, it all felt so overwhelming. It was like the ground had been pulled out from under me, and I was falling into a void where I didn't know who I was anymore, let alone what my future would look like. In the days that followed, I tried to make sense of what had happened. I wanted answers, but I didn't know how to approach him. I couldn't even look at him without feeling like I was suffocating. So, I did what I thought was the best thing at the time. I stayed quiet. I stayed silent, trying to process everything on my own. But the silence only made it worse. Every conversation, every glance, every moment we shared after that felt suffocating, as though we were strangers who had nothing in common. I kept telling myself that maybe it was just a mistake. Maybe it was just one moment of weakness. But Deep down, I knew it wasn't. There was part of me that still loved him, still cared for him. But how do you reconcile that with the fact that he had betrayed you in the most intimate way possible? How do you move forward when everything you thought was real turns out to be a lie? I reached out to him several times after the discovery, hoping for some kind of closure, some kind of explanation that would make it all make sense. But every time I tried, it felt like he was just giving me more lies, more excuses. It was a mistake, he'd say. It didn't mean anything. But how could I believe him? How could I ever trust anything he said again after everything I had learned? I found myself torn between wanting to believe him and knowing I couldn't. I wanted to hear him apologize, to see genuine remorse. But all I got were hollow words, and a sinking feeling in my stomach told me that nothing he said could undo the damage. In those quiet moments when I was alone with my thoughts, I couldn't help but wonder, what now? What do I do when the person I loved has destroyed everything we built together? Do I forgive? Do I move on? And if I move on, how? How do you rebuild from something like this? The uncertainty was crippling. I didn't know what my next step was, or even if I should be taking one. I didn't know if I could forgive him. I didn't know if I should stay or leave. I was lost, in a fog of confusion and heartbreak. And the hardest part? I didn't even know who I was anymore. Who was I without him? Would I ever feel whole again? It felt like I was drowning in questions with no answers. The confrontation came a few days after I had found the messages. I knew I couldn't stay in that place of uncertainty forever. I needed answers. I needed him to look me in the eye and tell me the truth. So I called him over, and we sat down in the living room. I could barely look at him, my heart pounding in my chest, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. I don't even remember exactly what I said first. Everything came out in a rush, like a tidal wave of hurt and anger. "Who is she?" I asked, my voice trembling but steady. "What is going on between you two?" He froze, his face paling, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of guilt in his eyes. But then he quickly masked it with something I couldn't quite place. I wanted him to come clean, to admit what he had done. But instead, he started, giving me excuses. "It's not what you think," he said, his voice shaky but trying to sound calm. "It was just a mistake. It didn't mean anything." I couldn't believe it. Every word felt like another knife twisting deeper into the wound. He told me that it was a one-time thing, that it didn't reflect his feelings for me, and that he was sorry. But all I could hear were lies, empty words that didn't change the reality I had just discovered. I looked at him, and for the first time, I felt like I didn't know him at all. He tried to explain himself, to justify his actions. But all I heard were more lies, more excuses I wasn't willing to accept. It felt like I was listening to someone else, a stranger. The person I loved, the person I had trusted, was gone. I wanted to scream, to throw something at him, to demand he tell me why, how, what went wrong. But instead, I stayed silent, fighting back the tears that were threatening to break free. The more he spoke, the more I felt torn apart. There was part of me that wanted to believe him. I wanted closure. I wanted him to promise me that everything would go back to how it was before. I wanted the life we had, the life I thought was real. But deep down, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. How could it be? How could I ever trust him after this? But then there was another part of me, the part that still loved him, still wanted him. I wanted him back, not because I thought I could fix things, but because the idea of living without him felt like losing a part of myself. I wanted to believe that this was just a mistake, that it didn't mean anything, that we could work through it. The emotional battle was unbearable. I felt like I was caught between two worlds, The one where I loved him and the one where everything had shattered. Was I not enough? I kept asking myself. How could he do this? Was I not enough for him? The questions kept echoing in my mind, like a constant drumbeat that wouldn't stop. Was I not deserving of his loyalty? Was I not worth his honesty? And the worst part, the part that made me feel like I had failed myself, was how blind I had been. How could I have not seen the signs? How could I have been so naive, so trusting, so sure that everything was fine when it clearly wasn't? I felt humiliated, betrayed, like I had allowed myself to be deceived for so long. I wanted him to hurt the way I was hurting. I wanted him to feel the weight of what he had done. But most of all, I wanted answers. Real answers that would make me feel like I wasn't crazy for doubting everything. I wanted him to take responsibility, to stop deflecting and explain why he chose to lie, why he chose to cheat. The confrontation ended with no resolution. He left, and I was left there, sitting in the emptiness of the room with my heart heavier than it had ever been. All I had were questions and pain. Nothing had been fixed, and I had no idea how to move forward. But in that moment, I realized that no matter how badly I wanted to believe him, no matter how much I wanted to hold on to what we had, I couldn't ignore the truth anymore. And that was the hardest pill to swallow. After the confrontation, I was left with the wreckage of what was once my life. I didn't know where to turn, who to talk to, or how to even begin to process what had just happened. I felt so alone in my thoughts, trapped in a whirlwind of confusion and heartbreak. It was like I couldn't trust myself anymore, let alone anyone else. But deep down, I knew I couldn't carry this burden on my own. I needed someone who could help me make sense of all the pain, someone who could remind me that I wasn't the one at fault. So I reached out. First, I called my best friend. She's always been the one I go to when everything falls apart. And that's exactly how I felt. Shattered. Broken. A version of myself that I didn't even recognize anymore. I told her everything. About the discovery, the confrontation, the pain. Her voice was calm but full of concern, and I could hear the worry in her tone as she asked me, "Are you okay?" But the truth was, I wasn't okay. How could I be? She listened to every word I said, never interrupting, just letting me vent all the emotions that had been building up inside of me. At first, she didn't say much, but when I finally stopped talking, she asked, "Do you think he's worth it? Is this someone you can forgive?" I didn't have an answer. I didn't know what I wanted anymore. But what she said next was something I'll never forget. "You don't deserve to be treated this way. You deserve someone who loves you for who you are, someone who values you, not someone who lies and betrays your trust." Hearing that from her, someone who knew me better than anyone, helped more than I can explain. It wasn't just about what she said, it was the way she said it, the belief she had in me, in my worth. In that moment, I realized I needed someone to remind me that I wasn't the problem here. It wasn't my fault that he chose to hurt me. And most importantly, I wasn't unworthy of love. But not everyone was as straightforward as my friend. My family's responses were more varied. My mom, bless her heart, was heartbroken for me. She couldn't believe it. "How could he do this to you?" she kept asking, her voice filled with the pain she felt for me. I knew she wanted me to leave him, to walk away and never look back. Her protective instinct was strong, and I couldn't blame her for it. She saw the hurt I was going through and she wanted to shield me from more of it. But my dad, he had a different perspective. He didn't jump straight to anger. Instead, he asked me, "What do you need? What do you want to do?" His approach was gentler. He wasn't telling me to leave or stay. He just wanted to know how I was feeling and what I needed to heal. And in that moment, it made me realize that sometimes the support you need isn't someone telling you what to do. Sometimes, it's someone just offering you the space to figure it out for yourself. The different responses from my friends and family made me realize something important. There is no right or wrong way to handle a situation like this. Everyone reacts differently, and everyone has their own way of processing pain. But through it all, I learned the value of having people around me who cared, who reminded me that I wasn't alone, and that I was worthy of respect and love. I needed those voices, those perspectives. It was easy to get lost in my own pain, to think that maybe I wasn't enough, that I had somehow brought this upon myself. But hearing those voices, whether encouraging me to walk away or offering a shoulder to lean on, gave me the clarity I needed. They reminded me of something I had almost forgotten. I am worth more than this, more than the lies, more than the betrayal. I am worthy of something better, something real. And that, more than anything, gave me the strength to keep going, to find my way out of the darkness. It wasn't long before I found myself asking a question that haunted me. Why did I stay? I had to sit with that question for days, turning it over in my mind, trying to understand what had kept me in a relationship where my trust was shattered, where I had been hurt so deeply. Why did I ignore the signs? Looking back, I realized that part of me had been so blinded by love, by the hope that we could make it work, that I couldn't see the reality that was staring me in the face. I ignored the subtle shifts, the times. He was distant, the excuses, the little lies. I convinced myself that things would get better, that this was just a rough patch. But deep down, I knew I had been ignoring the truth. I had convinced myself that love meant putting up with everything. I had convinced myself that if I stayed, I could fix things, that I could help him change. But that wasn't my responsibility. Why did I stay? Because I was afraid of being alone? Because I didn't believe I could be loved any other way? Or was it simply because I had invested so much of myself into something that was never meant to last? The truth was, I didn't know how to let go. I didn't know how to walk away from something I thought was real, even though it had been crumbling for a long time. But here's the thing, I had to learn slowly but surely that the reason I stayed wasn't because I wasn't worthy of more. It wasn't because I didn't deserve better. It was because I didn't fully understand my own worth. I didn't realize that I had the power to choose what I allowed in my life, that I had the strength to walk away from something that was hurting me, that I wasn't stuck. I had power over my own life and my own happiness. I started to understand that the way he treated me had nothing to do with me. It wasn't about my worth or who I was as a person. It had everything to do with his own flaws, his inability to respect me, his own insecurities and mistakes. I realized I couldn't internalize his actions. His betrayal wasn't a reflection of my value. It was a reflection of his inability to truly appreciate what he had. And in that realization, something began to shift. I started to understand that I wasn't defined by his actions. I wasn't defined by the hurt he caused me. I began to build a new understanding of who I was, of what I truly deserved. And as painful as it was, I began to let go of the person I thought I was, the person who was willing to sacrifice my own happiness for someone else. I am not weak for being hurt. I am not weak for loving someone who didn't deserve my love. I am stronger than I ever knew. It's a strength I didn't realize I had. The strength to see beyond the pain, the strength to stand up for myself, the strength to walk away when it was clear that I was no longer in a healthy relationship. I realized that I could rebuild, that I could start fresh, and that I didn't need anyone else to define me or make me whole. And as I began to heal, I began to feel something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing that I am enough and that no one, not him, not anyone, could take that away from me. Moving on wasn't as easy as I hoped it would be. It wasn't a clean break, a straight path forward. Healing doesn't happen overnight, But it does happen, and I had to remind myself of that every single day. At first, I felt like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. The emotional scars were still fresh, the pain still raw. I tried to stay busy, tried to distract myself, but no matter what I did, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing, like I was still somehow tethered to him, even though I had walked away. But with time, something began to shift. I started focusing on myself, rediscovering the things I loved before I had gotten lost in the relationship. I began to pick up hobbies I had put aside, things I had abandoned in the name of being there for someone else. I started painting again, something I hadn't done in years, and it felt like I was reconnecting with a version of myself I had long forgotten. I had forgotten how much I loved to create, how much joy it brought me. That was when I realized something. I had neglected myself in the process of loving someone else. I threw myself into my career. I had always been passionate about my work, but somehow I had lost that spark when I was in the relationship. Now, I found myself reconnecting with my goals, my ambitions. I found strength in my professional growth. It wasn't about running from the pain, but rather about rediscovering who I was when I wasn't defined by someone else's actions. Slowly but surely, I started to find joy in my own life again, independent of him, independent of what had happened between us. But even as I moved forward, there were lingering feelings. I wish I could say that the pain disappeared overnight, but it didn't. There were moments when I'd catch myself thinking about him, about what could have been, about the person I thought I knew. Sometimes, the memories would come rushing back, and I'd feel the familiar ache in my chest. Sometimes I'd still feel that sense of betrayal, that sting of being blindsided by someone I had trusted. But healing is messy. It's not linear. It doesn't follow a set timeline. There were good days and bad days. Some days I felt empowered, like I could conquer the world. Other days I felt like I had taken 2 steps backward. And that's okay. Healing doesn't mean the pain disappears completely. It means you learn how to live with it, how to move forward in spite of it. You start to realize that the person who hurt you no longer holds power over your happiness. You find a way to make peace with the past and focus on the future. For anyone who's going through something similar, I want you to know this. You are not alone. It's okay to feel lost, to feel broken, to feel like you'll never get past it. But trust me when I say that healing happens, even when it feels impossible. Take your time. Don't rush yourself. Lean on the people who support you, and be kind to yourself as you move forward. Every step you take is progress, even if it doesn't feel like it. You don't have to have it all figured out right away. I had to learn that healing is about more than just getting over someone. It's about rediscovering yourself, about finding strength in places you didn't know you had, about choosing yourself when it feels like the world is falling apart. It's about finding peace in knowing that you are worthy of love, real love, the kind that lifts you up, not tears you down. So take it day by day. Trust the process. And remember, you are stronger than you think. Looking back on everything, I've learned one thing above all else. Betrayal doesn't define you. Your response to it does. It's easy to let the pain take over, to let it shape who you are and how you see the world. For a while, I let it consume me. I let it make me question my worth, make me feel like I wasn't enough. But now, I see it differently. That betrayal was painful, yes, but it didn't define me. It didn't determine my value. My response to that pain, how I chose to heal and move forward, that's what defines me. That's what defines my strength. And if you're listening to this and going through something similar, I want you to know this. You are not alone. I know it feels isolating, like the world is closing in around you, but there are people who understand, who care, who want to see you heal. No matter how dark it feels right now, remember that you have the power to choose how you move forward. You don't have to carry the weight of someone else's actions forever. You are worthy of love, respect, and happiness. Don't let the past cloud your future. The hardest part of this journey was accepting that it wasn't about what happened to me. It was about how I chose to respond to it. I had the power to take control of my life again, to rediscover my worth and my happiness. And now, I can say with certainty that I am okay. And even more than that, I'll be even better. Stronger, wiser, and more in tune with who I am and what I deserve. So, to anyone going through this kind of pain, please hear me when I say, you will heal. It won't happen overnight, and there may be setbacks, but you will find your way. You will rebuild. And one day, you'll look back and realize that everything you went through only made you stronger. So, don't give up on yourself. Keep moving forward, and remember, there is so much more ahead of you than you can see right now. No matter what happened to me, I'm okay. And I'll be even better. As I reflect on this entire journey, I can't help but feel a sense of growth. Even in the midst of all the pain, I started in a place of trust and love, only to have it shattered by betrayal. I questioned myself, my worth, and my ability to trust again. But in the end, I discovered something far more important than the pain I endured. I rediscovered my own strength, my resilience, and my ability to heal. I learned that I am worthy of love and respect, and that no one can take that from me. The journey wasn't easy, and I don't expect it to be for anyone who's going through something similar. But what I do know is that healing is possible. I started in a place of heartbreak, but I ended up stronger, wiser, and more confident in who I am and what I deserve. So now, I want to ask you, what did you learn about yourself in the toughest moments of your life? How did those challenges shape who you are today? If you've been through something like this, I encourage you to share your story in the comments. Let's create a space where we can support one another, learn from each other, and remind each other that we are never truly alone in our pain. If you enjoyed this video and found strength in my story, please subscribe for more content and continue on this journey of healing and self-discovery with me. Remember, no matter what you're going through, you will make it through, and you will come out even better on the other side. Thank you for watching.